Hi, good morning. This is Andrew from Talking ESL, and today I wanted to talk about a grammar and vocabulary learned differently. So, if we focus on a learner-centered approach, then perhaps we're looking more at acquisition than language teaching. As Scott Thornbury wrote, the learner should not be seen as the object of the verb to teach, but the subject of the verb to learn. So I've also researched this field, and particularly I spent a lot of time reading Bill Van Patten and David Crystal, and I'd like to sort of present a summary of what I've learned so far. Vocabulary is not just about meaning. In Spanish, for example, pan means bread. This is a meaning, it's syntactic meaning, one thing meaning another, like imagine a flashcard in class. However, the words pan or bread also have syntactic properties. The word bread in English is a noun. It's also countable. That's why we have some bread, not a bread. So there's that sort of meaning to it as well. So when we acquire language, not only do we learn the meaning, what it is, pan and bread, we acquire the syntactic properties of the vocabulary. Some bread, not a bread. We also learn the underlying concept of where and how a word can be used in a sentence. This is not too different from what's traditionally called grammar. Chomsky wrote a famous example, a sentence, which is, colourless green ideas sleep furiously. Now obviously this phrase has no real meaning, but it is grammatically correct. Listen again. Colourless green ideas sleep furiously. So we know the syntactic properties of these words. We know which order we can put them in. It just happens in this example, it doesn't really have any meaning, but the grammar's good. And David Crystal, as quoted from Grammar should be renamed Understanding Language in The Guardian, well, he argued that grammar needs context, much like vocabulary. He said, you need to put the notion of grammar in the background. It's all about meaning and clarity. Another salient point here is, where does vocabulary end and grammar begin? If you're teaching something like common collocations or dependent prepositions like keen on, interested in, good at, and so on, do you consider those to be grammar or do you consider them to be vocabulary? So the thing is, vocabulary and grammar are acquired much in the same way. Mental representation of language is both meaning and properties, syntactic properties. And you can see one of my other videos to get a better idea of mental representation of language and what it is. So input and interaction are key for language acquisition. Also, further notes on this. Personally, when I'm teaching or when I'm learning, I use a structure mentioned by Michael Graves in the year 2000 as far as vocabulary is concerned. So the structure is this. Part 1, wide or extensive independent reading to expand word knowledge. Part 2, instruction in specific words to enhance comprehension of texts containing those words. Step 3, instruction in independent word learning strategies. And step 4, word consciousness and word play activities to motivate and enhance learning. So that's the structure. How do we apply it in the classroom? Well, part 1, which was wider extensive reading to expand word knowledge, as far as that's concerned, I believe it meets crashing. And whether we're teaching young learners, teenagers or adults, or indeed learning myself, I always use wider extensive reading in my class, because this helps the students to amplify their knowledge of the meanings of words in context. It also provides them with the function or use of words, and it provides them with the grammar. The second part, instruction in specific words to enhance comprehension of text containing those words, well, the second part may involve resolving any misunderstandings or helping students to identify the meaning of a particular word they can't glean from context. So how do I do this? Well, I mostly use synonyms to achieve this, as there's often a related word which they do know. Because I'm quite lucky that I'm teaching in Spain, Now, obviously, English is kind of part Germanic, part Latin, and it's the Germanic words that people struggle with. So if I can find a synonym which is rooted in Latin or French, quite often it's very similar to the word in Spanish, so the students will understand. Like, let's take the word flood. So it's been raining, there's a big flood in the town. What's a flood? Inundation is the synonym. And inundación in Spanish. Okay, so we can do that. Sometimes that doesn't work. So that might be the case where a direct translation to their L1 is necessary, rather than sort of circumlocuting around and describing the flood. Oh, there's water everywhere where there shouldn't be. This is what it means. It's like a river in the streets and so on. No, it's una inundación. I'm giving the direct translation. Word learning strategies. My students use a wide variety of methods for this. They could be asked to use them in a dialogue or a written piece, which can be quite artificial. Or they can use task-based learning in order to maximize the output. We can have them using this language properly in tasks. And in part 4, which was the wordplay activities to motivate and enhance learning, I might use things at the end of the class, such as a quick game of Taboo or Hangman, or interactive games which I create to put on the laptop through the projector, and I give the students a wireless controller, like a wireless mouse, to go around the room and answer the questions connected to the vocabulary or the grammar on the board. That's often done as a reward at the end of the class. And then sometimes, depending on the group, following the class, I'll review the vocabulary from previous classes, or I may set that as preparation work for them to do at home with a different text, with a sort of accumulation of the vocabulary that we've learned in that text, or an audio, for example. Because by the end of the course, I want to be reviewing all the vocabulary that the students have been exposed to in that course, using the Common European Reference Framework as a basis for the vocabulary at each different level. Why do I do this? Well, quite often I've seen teachers who teach or give a vocabulary item once in a big long list of words and expect the students to remember it and have it at their disposal forever. Well, the brain doesn't work like that. That's either kind of lazy teaching or teaching to test. Oh, we've got a test at the end of this unit in the textbook, so you must know all this vocabulary in 3 weeks' time. And then 3 weeks pass, you do the exam, they all pass the exam, forget that vocabulary and move on to something else. That's not really effective language teaching at all, because the students aren't building anything. They're being taught to test. So as a language learner, and through research, I found that this teach to test or teach the vocab or grammar once doesn't work. The repetition should be done in a communicative, task-orientated way. Then this avoids long lists of words, and crucially, it avoids boredom. So it's another tick in the box for task-based learning. So, thank you for watching. And also, so you know, you can head on over to our Patreon account, which we've just set up. And there's be some exclusive activities there. There's some prizes to be had for people who subscribe on Patreon, and also exclusive content that you won't see here on YouTube. But in the meantime, if you have any questions or suggestions, or anything you would like me to make a video about, please comment in the box below. Thank you. Bye bye.